Hello, welcome back, AI Curious Folk. AI Ramblings Daily, episode 79. It's Tuesday. I'm Michael Parekh, your human AI guide. We've got a lot of fun things to cover, and let's get started. The theme today I want to focus on is Anthropic, a no drama AI company. This is the quieter, steady as it goes AI company, particularly if your news filter is basically open to things like everything having to do with Elon Musk's lawsuit against OpenAI and all the drama that continues to go around there. And of course, the substantial media and investor attention behind those two companies, when this third one is just puttering along, doing its thing, all of them trying to get out to mega AI IPOs, each worth $1 trillion or more later this year. SpaceX out front in June, but they're all in the lead. But in the meantime, there were at least three things that Anthropic came up on the news so far this week that I wanted to highlight around this overall theme. So let me just get into that. Number one is the issue. There's a lot of post-mortem going on in the Elon Musk lawsuit against OpenAI, who won, who lost, etc. There are a number of very detailed write-ups that I will put in the show notes as usual for source links. New York Times had a good discussion. Axios had a good discussion around the trial. Axios' position was that the entire AI industry lost because of the trial. The New York Times, the headline was, "Now post this lawsuit, we get ready for AI's long, hot AI summer," which is fairly on track. But what's missing there is, since they're talking about winners and losers, I think Anthropic is the winner. They didn't have to go through this for weeks and months. Their executives didn't have to prep for this stuff and deal with the appeals and so on that Elon is promising, because of course he is. And there is a lot to be done this year. As you know, even if these companies were not doing IPOs, the amount of execution ramps, whether it's on AI research, hiring, building product, building expansive elements of the product, building products on top of products. It's an extraordinary amount of work. I have, in 30 plus years of watching AI tech waves of different types, the amount of execution that is in front of these executive teams, whether they're big tech companies or medium and small companies, is just extraordinary. I've never seen this level of things you need to do, because if you want to be an AI software or services company, you also need to have infrastructure, either your own, or you need to be able to rent, beg, borrow, steal some of that, as it were. Anthropic has been just doing things steadily along these lines. So on that number one topic of the lawsuit winner, I think Anthropic is the lawsuit winner. The second item I wanted to talk about is Anthropic had some news on their next generation Mythos language model, which is already being anticipated in a substantial way at the governmental levels, corporate levels, particularly because of its potential threat on the cybersecurity side. Anthropic has been careful working with all the big entities around the world to make sure that the cybersecurity profile of Mythos is within safety guidelines, etc. OpenAI is trying to do the same thing with their GPT 5.5 and Spud version, but everyone's eyes are on Mythos, this next generation system that basically takes Claude Code and Claude Co-work beyond 4.7, which is the current version. So we will see how that goes. But the core here is that they made a stance change that allowed the people doing the cybersecurity reviews a little bit more leeway in terms of accelerating the ramp and progress on Mythos. So let's see. I have a detailed post on all of this from a few days ago called Anthropic Claude Peekaboo and the Glasswing security efforts. So there's a lot of detail if you want to go get into it. But this is a core piece that, slow and steady, they're continuing to make progress, inching Mythos along to a broader, wider global release, and presumably get accelerated revenues on that, because Mythos is supposedly priced much higher than the current models, but more importantly is a lot more capable than current models, especially around agentic stuff, which is the current hot area, especially in terms of the coding area. The third thing is AI research. They just managed to snag a fellow by the name of Andrej Karpathy, which if you're not in the AI or tech circles, you don't know who he is. I've written a lot about him. He was a former co-founder of OpenAI. He headed Elon's Tesla self-driving effort years ago. And over the last few years, he's been like the coder's coder. He has been like an Uber coder. He has tremendous amount of presence online, YouTube, etc. He's done a lot of workshops for coders that just walk them through the practical nitty-gritty around working with language models of all types and sizes. He's the one who coined vibe coding as a phrase, which became a thing, which has led to the current focus in Silicon Valley around token maxing and so on. So it's interesting, and he's very into education efforts, and he's put that up on a hiatus as he joins OpenAI. He had a post on this, which I will put in the links as well. And there's a lot of laudatory comments on Anthropic getting Andre to join their AI research effort. Presumably, he'll also be involved on obviously the coding product, and he has a lot of practical bottom-up product insights, which comes through in his writings and in his presentations and his YouTube discussions and so on. So it is an exciting moment, especially because of his general profile with developers and researchers. And as we know, the core battle for all of these AI labs is talent. Mark Zuckerberg is known for, as he built his MSL, his Meta Super Intelligence team, he has been front and center along with Alexander Wang, basically, who heads that effort to recruit individually the major AI researchers for tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars of compensation. In many cases, Mark is a legend for having brought soup to specific AI researchers. So there's a lot of lore around this stuff. And the fact that Andre is now joining Anthropic in the midst of all of this other hullabaloo that's going on around OpenAI and Elon and everything is a notable event. So I wanted to just flag that, and we'll track what he does with the various Claude Cowork and other products. So it's an interesting point to kind of underline today. So overall, I just wanted to emphasize that Anthropic, in my mind, even though it is being recognized by investors as making progress, they're reputed to be crossing the $50 million ARR, $50 billion revenue run rate, which is important by June next month. They're the tortoise that's outpaced the OpenAI hare, and I've written about that. And it's generally been flawless execution without all of the legal hullabaloo that's going on. Dario Amodei, who's the founder CEO, along with the sister, who's the number 2 operating head of the company, they continue to be, again, very steady, thoughtful in terms of how they're executing on all of the efforts. The only 2 points that I have as somewhat of a disagreement with is on Dario's 2 stances. One is his anti-China stance. Anthropic just had another piece on that was very anti-China in the context of the race, geopolitical, existential security kind of thing, which I have written a lot about and talked a lot about. I'm more in the Jensen Huang camp, that there is a way to thread the needle, that it's going to be better for both countries to figure out how to work together, especially given the broader goals of AI beyond large language models into robotics, into cars, into drones, into AI devices of every type. We in the US, as much as we want, as many of the political promises we can get from partners that will invest 100 billion here, 200 billion there, all in the US, physically and people-wise, we just cannot scale to do this. It's just not in the time required. So to work with China is essential. And Dario's stance here is something that I disagree with. I've written a lot about it. But so that's item number 1. Number 2, he also tends to be very strident on the job losses from AI at every level, beginning to senior. His phrase is geniuses in data centers type of thing. I think all of that is well and good, to promote your company, etc. But I think it's premature, and there are a lot of AI scientists who kind of back that up. Jan LeCun, I've written a lot about. He was the former head of AI at Meta, who has his own multi-billion-dollar startup, and many, many others. But those are the 2 issues. But other than that, I think that Dario and his team are running the company relatively flawlessly in the current environment, especially ahead of IPOs. So I just wanted to give kudos where kudos is due. And that is my main theme, Anthropic, for the slow and steady, quiet tortoise against the hare type of company, and against the hullabaloo from Elon Musk, SpaceX, XAI, Global, Terafab, data centers in space, all the drama that is ahead in this hot AI summer. Okay, gadget AI time. Here, my favorite subject, of course, Apple, which I continue to think is very well positioned, especially with the new former head of hardware and the new former head of Apple Silicon are now the two senior executives starting this September who are going to run the company. And there was some news today, which I'll again have links, a lot of detail in this Bloomberg article about how Apple under Johnny Srouji, who's now the number two chief hardware head. He is the number one hardware head. He used to be the head of Apple Silicon, but he's redesigning Apple design and across all of their products. There's a lot of details here, a lot of personnel changes, which if you're not a close Apple student of their organization, it's going to be too much detail. But going through it all, it integrates that they are serious about the broader things I have talked about, that Apple, along with NVIDIA in my mind, I had a big post this Sunday, is very well positioned for AI across hardware and software because they, like NVIDIA, control the hardware silicon, and then everything else, open source software in particular, can be built on top, and it requires just massive amounts of scale in manufacturing, supply chains. It requires massive amount of attention to detail in terms of engineering, product, hardware, software. And these moves that are going on at Apple across key product lines, everything from the Mac to the iPhone to the AirPods to watches to a whole bunch of things that they've not announced in terms of AI wearables, it's very clear that they're deep sleeves up, rolled up and working, and Srouji is making changes, and a lot of them are obviously around what John Ternus, the new CEO, is going to want to do. And of course, Tim Cook, who remains as executive chairman, dealing with all the political issues that the company has to navigate through still, but heads the board for years to come. So it's an important thing for the industry to kind of watch, and I just wanted to highlight this in the weeds product design org change thing as a key development in my excitement and anticipation for Gadget AI, particularly ahead of the WWDC developer conference coming up on June 8th in not too long. So that takes us to our questions of the day. And since we were talking about Apple, I'll take a couple of questions on that side. One question was, Michael, what's your core favorite Apple product beyond the iPhone, which everyone knows I'm nuts. I walk around with two of them, the Pro Max and the the iPhone Air, which I love. But it's the AirPods, these things. And I've, use them for everything, super versatile, amazing software capability. They keep improving it magically. These are the Pro ones. And I've written about, I'm very excited about the next ones that have cameras built in them, not to take pictures necessarily in terms of just snapshots and portraits and so on, but more for ambient AI awareness, which I think is a very differentiated strategy relative to competing products. So I'm very excited for the Apple AirPods, Pro on down. And so that would be my favorite beyond iPhone type of a device. And then the second question, just because, pros and cons, is what is my key daily gripe with an Apple product? And here it's, my favorite watch is the Apple Watch. I own two of the Ultras, and, because I like the bigger screens. But my biggest gripe, and I've talked about it at times, is just that, again, this is a teeny software detail, but again, sometimes you have to pay attention to little details that affect daily use. Is that the watch still, even if it's been on my wrist all day and they've got umpteen sensors to sense all that, it keeps asking for the security pin. So you got to type in these 4 digits, even when you're just raising your hand to look at the time. There should be a change here. I will bring it to John Ternus's attention, product design, and Srouji. Just change that piece, because if the watch is the core functionality of this thing, and if it asks for a pin when you raise your hand, when you know that the watch has the sensors know that it's not left the human's wrist, then no need to ask for the pin every time, and they're just looking for the time. Small gripe, but this is attention to detail. This is what Steve Jobs lived for, the chamfer on the edges on the devices. This is the software piece. This is one of many. I have a small list. I'll kind of talk about them in a future post. But that is my core gripe, since you asked me, and it's a mini rant. So thank you for tolerating that at the moment. But anyway, so that's our post today, AI Ramblings 79. I hope you found it interesting. Please convey any feedback, questions, like, subscribe is always appreciated. The AI-RTZ post today is 1091. OpenAI, again, the lawsuit thing, I go through a lot of that in detail. So if you want to take a look at that. And then tomorrow, of course, ARD 80 and AI-RTZ 1092. Thank you for tuning in, AI curious folk. Stay tuned.